So I just finished the Saturday morning meditation session here, and I thought I would record what I talk about when someone brand new to meditation comes in. Right, this is a very open class, and I have people who are very experienced, meditating for decades, coming in to practice and to share some community. And then people who are interested in meditation but have never had any instruction, maybe listen to some podcasts, but really looking to experience meditation too. And what I've found is that there's a few things that I like to bring to the forefront right at the start. And not that these are necessary to practice, but I think it's useful to disambiguate a few terms. So I start by articulating attention, mindfulness, and distraction. Attention, mindfulness, and distraction. Mindfulness in particular is one of those words that we use very, very generally in America. For example, I work at a corporation, large corporation, and they offer mindfulness classes there. But they aren't offering mindfulness classes on the path to enlightenment, right? They're offering mindfulness classes as stress reduction so that I will be a better worker. Something like that's a bit cynical, but you know what, right? Mindfulness in general can be used to refer to relaxation or to stress reduction, focus. You hear mindfulness in Silicon Valley, entrepreneurs talking about mindfulness as a sort of self-realization. And all of that is true enough. And all of that are secondary phenomena that come along with meditation. But in this context, in the practice of Bon, in calm abiding, in the equanimity of the mind, mindfulness means something very particular. And it doesn't mean that those other definitions are wrong. It just means that it's helpful to have a very clear starting point. Mindfulness is the attribute of our awareness that knows if we're paying attention or not. So the foundation practice that we do here is to focus on the breath. And we focus on the breath. We apply effort to focus on the breath because starting off, our mind, our daily mind, in its unmediated form, our daily mind is filled with thoughts and emotions that we think define who we are. Our daily mind. Now, our natural state is different from that. Our natural state is equanimous and open, poised, unattached, enlightened, whatever language you want to use. But if we were to just sit, and the very first meditation instruction was, let it all be, I think, so take this with a grain of salt, it's what I think is important. I think that most of us would spend that meditation practice absolutely hypnotized by our thoughts and concerns. We would not be letting it be because we are too attached and too distracted. So now, there's different approaches to this. There's certainly a school of instruction that begins with that moment of awareness of natural state and then stabilizes that out. But what I find and what I think has certainly been my case and what I think is helpful for a lot of people is set something in place that we can focus on so that we can learn what distraction is. Do you know what I mean? If we say focus on the breath, and then find that for 5 minutes I've been thinking about the dream I had a couple of days ago, or a conversation I had with my father 40 years ago, which is something that we talked a little bit about in the session today. What the initial attention allows us to do is identify the breath, the object of attention, with enough space to be aware of what is not the breath. Because those things that are not the breath are the distraction. So those thoughts are going to happen. The practice, as we're talking about here, is not to have no thought. It is to have the space where the thought and the feelings and the physical sensations are allowed to arise and to sustain themselves without our energy, and then ultimately to do what they will do, which is to disperse. And our meditation is to observe that. And we can observe it at first by knowing that this is the breath. Eventually, we can let go of that. That breath is like a scaffold, or it's like a training wheel. So, I spend a lot of time talking about attention, being the focus on the object, distraction, meaning the things that are not the breath, and then mindfulness being the part of our awareness that knows if we're distracted or not. And we want to cultivate mindfulness, right? I give some direction about the pose, because I think it's important to have a comfortable pose, one that is alert. So moving towards that full lotus pose, but recognizing like I cannot get into even a half lotus pose, and I need bolsters under my knees. But along with the focus on the breath, I spend a lot of time talking about the sensation of grounded relaxation in the body. So the legs should be supported either by the mat on the ground or by an extra cushion if you need it, with the sense of balance. So not too relaxed, where I'm just sort of sprawled out, but also not too tight so that I'm unable to sustain that pose without agitation, right? If I try to get into even a half lotus, I will be so agitated that there's no point in me meditating. It would be like trying to meditate sitting on a hot tin plate. It's not conducive to the initial stages of practice. Eventually, yes, separate out the experience of pain and discomfort, but that's not how I want to start meditation. I want it to be comfortable so that we can establish the stability of the body, right? The spine erect, but not ramrod, right? Spacious. Erect means spacious. Coming from the base of the legs and the base of the spine on the cushion, the spine comes up as if there's a column through the top of the head. So not like this, but like this. And then the shoulders, nice open space, the hands resting in the lap. And then from there, the chin is down a little bit, so it's the back of the neck that is straight, nice, spacious evenness. Right? So I spend a lot of time talking about the comfort of the pose. And by comfort, I don't mean collapsed, sprawling. I mean, like the image, the very traditional image is the image of a harp. If it's too tight, the string will break. If it's too loose, it won't make any sound. If it's strung just right, it makes a resonant, plucking sound, a beautiful golden tone from the harp. That's the sensation we want in our body. And then the attention on the breath allows the mind to relax, and we create this sort of virtuous cycle between the body and the mind. The body relaxes, the mind settles, the body relaxes. And then over time, that becomes deeper and deeper, broader and broader. The eyes become, the visual sense becomes spacious. And at a certain point, the effort to focus on the breath is no longer necessary. We can continue to focus on the breath in sort of deep concentration practice. It's one path, or we can let it go. focus on natural state of the mind, right? There's many different forms of meditation. But in this session on the Saturdays, I focus on those pieces. And I continue to return to them because we can become distracted in the 10 minutes, 20 minutes, hour of our practice. And we can become distracted over the course of a week and forget them. And over the course of a lifetime, we can move in and out of practice. So it's worth revisiting the basic posture and mind. And that in itself is beneficial. Right? Why do I think that meditation reduces stress or increases focus or other health benefits? It's because you let go of the attachment to the distraction. So we're no longer buffeted, right? The sea is calm, right? The last thing I'll say now, then, an image that I use all the time. It comes from the text. It's a beautiful image. If you have a glass of water that is filled with particles and it's swirling, you have sort of a muddy, dirty water. And most of the time in our life, we're effectively swirling the glass. And what we do when we meditate is we set the glass down and we're no longer swirling it. We're no longer actively causing the water to be agitated. So the first thing that happens is the water settles. It stops spinning. And then over time, as the water is no longer being agitated, is no longer swirling, the particles settle down, like our thoughts settle down. They don't go away, they settle down. And what we're left in is clean water with particles. And that's what we're doing. When we sit and meditate, we are, at the very least, no longer agitating our mind. And as we do it more consistently, right, we don't need to sit for an hour a day to get the benefits. We need to sit every day. But I tell, again, particularly people who are in for the first time, you don't need to sit for an hour or 10 minutes. You need to sit every day. And maybe that's for a minute. Come back next week and say that every day you sat for 1 minute, and I would be wonderful. That would be wonderful, right? The rest is details. So, let me know what you think. I bring this from my background, my experience. It's less formal than some. It's a focus on what I think is important, so I recognize that that's my constraints based on where I am. But I think it makes a fundamental sense, right? Meditation has to feel welcoming so that we can settle in and become familiar. So, anyway, 8:30 in the morning on Saturdays, if you want to come to the Omo Ling Center in Pittsburgh.